Hi, my name's Donald. I'm a drug addict. I forgot my belt, so if you guys see me lifting these pants up here, please forgive me. I try to wear suits on only a few occasions. You can use your imagination on what those may be for. And I'm going to tell you some stories while I'm up here, and you guys will probably gather that joke. Now, my wife, and I thank her very much for introducing me, she shared with you our marriage and our life and some things that we've gotten to do together, man. And inside this program, it's been absolutely amazing. You know, I've gotten to know some of the very best people. I've gotten to watch them grow, and I've gotten to grow too. You know, and like my wife had said, there's been a lot of not so easy times in our marriage, but it's been a great opportunity for her to grow. And I've been here to support her along the way. So thank all of you for, helping her along. So, man, I'm Donald Schnock, and don't worry about my anonymity. I assure you, if you share with anybody that I'm in Cocaine Anonymous, they won't find an extra special attraction to come to Cocaine Anonymous. Unlike Brad Pitt or somebody else, I don't even know if that guy's sober, but it surely won't lend any extra oomph to get you in the door here if you know that I'm here. Not that I have that much power over anything, but what I do have the power over is that I can continue to do this program, right or wrong. I can continue to work the 12 steps and have an experience as time goes on. And like Erica said, I make an awful lot of mistakes, man. As I get rolling in my story, you'll hear that I, man, have gotten into this program and I got to grow up. And I grew up in Cocaine Anonymous. And it hasn't always been a elegant growth, for lack of a better explanation. But, man, I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. Anybody from Tucson in here? All right, yeah. I saw some people. And, man, it's a fine place if you ever get a chance. And so I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. I grew up to a mother and a father that, man, they did absolutely the best job that they could. My mom was severely mentally ill. She was in and out of mental hospitals my entire life, and my dad was a convict alcoholic that found you people, and he did absolutely the best job that he could. And I learned a few things from my dad that have stuck with me, good and bad, through my entire sobriety. One, that the biggest piece of chicken always goes to him. When we're at dinner at my house growing up, he always got the biggest piece of chicken, because that's how it worked. And man, and from an early age, I started developing all these ideas about how life worked and the world worked. And he left and married another woman and left my mom and I mentally ill. I remember the day that he left. We had a conversation in the morning. He dropped me off at school. He said, "Hey, I'm marrying a lady," and I knew the lady, and he said, you try to talk to me like a man. Said, "Hey, I'm gonna, I want a life better than what we have, and I'll be back for you, and take care of your mom." And he left, and he died shortly thereafter, and it was me and Mom. And I remember I was at a baseball game. I like to play baseball, and my mother was crying and hyperventilating so loudly they had stopped the game, pulled me out of the game, and I walked home with my mom because my dad had the only vehicle in the house, and he took that with him. And I remember an earlier memory that my mom had gotten sick, and I don't know why she didn't go straight to the mental hospital, but there was something in between, and he couldn't take care of me, and she was going to the mental hospital. I went to this place. It was like some sort of like group home, Casa Day, something. And I remember I had to take a bath in front of some strangers, because we didn't want to, I don't know if it's bring germs or whatever, but it was like it wasn't like inappropriate, but I remember I was a kid and it was humiliating. And I don't remember the feeling, I couldn't describe it then, but I remember thinking to myself as I'm in this cot with like 50 other kids, spread around a room like this, I remember thinking to myself that there's always going to be a time where you have to cut your losses, and I recognized that I was baggage. And my mom, she's a super sweet lady. She loves me unconditionally. My wife even faults her because she told me that she loved me so much and how good I was. My wife may believe that it might have been to my detriment. And but Mom hooked me up, right, Mom? Mom gave me a ton of self-confidence. She told me she loved me. She told me I was special, all those things. And because of all that stuff that happened isn't why I'm a drug addict. Why I'm a drug addict is because I love the way that drugs and alcohol make me feel. And I remember growing up, my mother, we lived in a nice apartment. They were relatively nice. It was Section 8, but they were pretty clean. And in the complex next door, I was hanging out with my dearest friend from childhood. I always called him my cousin. It was my cousin John, and he says, "Hey man, Donald, listen." Or he called me Donnie because that's what they called me in my childhood. And my mom still calls me, it drives me insane. But anyway, he goes, "Hey man, Donnie, check it out, man. The neighbor dudes, they got this gas mask bong, right? And dude, it's got like military grade face mask, glass eyeballs. You just got to get them high. You know what I mean?" And I was like, "All right, cool." So we snaked some laundry change from Mom. It was back in the day of laundry change. I don't know if any of you remember that. You go to the laundromat with the change. And so I get some change, and I get a little sack. We go to the neighbor, and that's where I met my first sponsor. His name was Garrett. He was a real fine dude. And I did exactly what he told me to do, and I got exactly what he had. And Garrett, being the fine individual that he was, we hit that gas mask bong, and we got super high. And he was a little older. He was from California. Him and his sister were on the run. They were persons of interest in a drive-by shooting. They ended up in Tucson, and they were just, man, they cared for me, man, seemingly. And he was my first sponsor, man. He taught me how to do everything. He was he was just a bad dude. And I don't mean bad like, well, I mean, he was probably that too in many respects, but I mean, he was just a bad person. And I remember, man, one of my early childhood memories is they would come to my house and they would take like lunch meat out of the house because everybody's broke and starving and trying to make ends meet. And I remember being afraid, intimidated. I couldn't tell them, "You can't take that." I couldn't stand up. And my mother, she watched it happen, and she couldn't stand up for her or for me. And I remember this most fundamental resentment of that. I couldn't protect my mom. She couldn't protect me. And it was time for something to change. And thank God I had that sponsor because he taught me things, and he showed me things. And he showed me that, nothing mattered. There was a pistol changed everything. And so I would run around and I would do his collections. I would sit out in front of the house and I would sell crack. So it was extremely well understood that you couldn't get more than till your 18th birthday in the state of Arizona. So it was an unspoken that was your responsibility. If If you were under the age of 18, it was your responsibility to hold the crack, hold the peace, do it all. And man, and I was a good sponsee, man. I did all that. And man, and I learned a ton of valuable lessons at that young age. And I learned that, man, for crack, people will do anything. And I had yet to ever smoke crack cocaine, but I recognized at that young age that people will do anything. You'll do absolutely anything for another hit of that crack cocaine. And that was before I'd ever even taken a hit of crack. And you know, one of my earlier memories with Garrett, there was a neighbor, and he had this banging weed, and I didn't know his name, so I just called him Skunk Man, and he became the Weed Connect, and I had no other name for him but Skunk Man. He was a skunk man. He had that chronic, and well, Skunk Man's neighbor were these was this like construction worker and his wife and their couple kids, and they smoked cocaine and they bought crack from Garrett, and I must have been 12, 13 maybe, and it was like a Tuesday. It was after school because Garrett always said, "Hey man, go to school." And I mean, don't get me wrong, man. Garrett has some good qualities. So yeah, always encouraged me to go to school. But it was like a Tuesday, early afternoon, and he's like, "Hey man, come on, you want to go get a blowjob?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "You bet." And I never had a blowjob. I thought this is gonna be great. And forgive my language. Now, where's Star? Star, are you in here? All right, thank you because I was very nervous before I got up here. And Star, I'm not throwing you on Front Street, but it got it off on the right foot, because I got to tell you, I'm a bit unconventional in the sense that for the people in here who've heard my story and know me, man, I am not your picture of circuit speaker. So, dear God, thank you to the committee for asking me. I still question your judgment, but thank you. I'm absolutely honored, and I hope you guys enjoy. But so, first blowjob says, "Hey man, let's go get this." Says, "Hey man, let's go get this blowjob." I'm like, "All right," and so we go, man, and we go to the apartments the Skunk Man lives in. He goes and bangs on the neighbor's door, ding, 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 and oddly enough, I remember having a early resentment about this neighbor because I had served the neighbor dude the first time, right? Boom, and so in my mind, I was building up, my customer base. I was gonna be, a solo agent here in no time at all, and start my empire and get my own station wagon with some subwoofers in it. The whole car vibrates. Sound like a sardine can rolling down the road with a bunch of speakers in it. And I knew that I was gonna too have one of those one day. And so I remember, as crazy as it's having this little resentment as we're walking over there, thinking, "Man, them were my customers." And so we knock on the door, and it was dude's wife that was there, and dude was at work, right? And so Garrett goes in there with her, and then comes out, and he's like, "Hey man, your turn." And man, and I remember sitting there thinking, and my palms are sweaty, and I'm taking in what's in the house, and there's kids' toys in the living room, and I remember thinking at that very moment, like, I knew exactly what was going on. I knew that dude was at work trying to pay the bills. Wife's here, seemed like a super nice lady. And, well, man, that crack, you'll do anything for that crack. You will do absolutely anything for that crack. What I didn't realize is that I would do absolutely anything for that crack. I had yet to realize that I would do anything for that crack. And so we get in the bathroom, And it was the first time I'd ever seen anybody smoke crack, because doing crack was a no-no when you sold crack. It was like they didn't go together. You either smoked it or you sold it. And I didn't know why exactly that was either, but I found out. I assure you that, I found out. But, so she's like, hey, man. So we get in the bathroom, and I sit down on the toilet, and she's hitting this can. And she's like, man, how old are you? I'm like, I'm 17. She was like, no, you're not. And she's like, watch out, I sit down, you stand up. And popped her teeth out. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. So, two things. So one, not the most glamorous story. And two is that you'll do absolutely anything for that crack. And I remember as I walked out of that bathroom and I took it all in, and Garrett was sitting there, big smile on his face. The house, the apartment, just the odor, I was embarrassed, I was ashamed, I felt disgusted, I felt dirty. And I remember thinking at that moment, I thought, God, that crack's gotta be good. Now, I knew better. At that time period, I knew better. But it planted this seed. And then shortly thereafter, I got arrested for a litany of things, and I got sent off to the juvenile prison, right? And I had this cellie of mine, and I knew him from the neighborhood because we would sell him crack. Him and this other dude, they had some money there from like this little pocket in Tucson that like had some money, and we sold him crack from time to time. And I knew that he smoked crack, and we sat in that cell for about a year, and we talked all about smoking crack. And he used to get on me and go, hey man, Donald, all that crack, man, you never smoked it, not once. I'm like, nah, man, nope, never. Now, I had smoked Sherm, I'd done coke, I had done practically everything imaginable under the sun at that point, but I had not done any I had not done crystal meth, and I had not done crack, and I had not done heroin, and all of which I had kind of like a secret little like reserve. I couldn't wait to try it, but the timing was never quite right, and so I had gotten out, and Garrett was still there, but things had changed for Garrett. Garrett had gotten a lot bigger, and so he bestowed on me this responsibility. He said, hey man, look, me and Amanda, his sister, hey, we're going to California, visit my mom. This is a funny story. He goes, and I can't wait. I hope one day I see her in the rooms. Because it planted this weird seed. He goes, hey man, check it out. We're going to California. I'm going to leave you this weed. I'm going to leave you this big old rolling paper that came out of a Cheech and Chong record. And I'm like, man, where's this from? And he goes, well, my mom back in California, man, he goes, she went to this Cocaine Anonymous. And I was like, Cocaine Anonymous? Is that like Alcoholics Anonymous, but you smoke cocaine? And he's like, yeah, my mom, she did speed, she always she always had a cook for a boyfriend, but I go, she might have done some cocaine too, I think, man, that's how she must have got there. I don't know, man, to be honest with you. I was like, oh, that's cool. I bet it's better than Alcoholics Anonymous, because I've been to the AA meetings with my dad, and they were pretty crusty there, so I bet it's a livelier bunch of Cocaine Anonymous. And you know what? I was right. Yeah. And, so he said, hey, man, listen, we're going to go to California. I'm going to leave the house to you. I'm going to leave this. There's a little bit of dope on above the counter, and you can You can sell that, leave the car. You know, you got everything that you need. Keep an eye on the crib, feed the dogs. I'll see you in a week. And I was like, all right. He left. I pulled that tray down from above those cupboards. And man, and there was half ounce on that tray probably. Big old fat cookie. And I took one look at it and was like, went straight to the house phone. Called my celly Big Head and was like, hey man, Big Head, hey man, listen. Man, there's all this crack here, man. I'm thinking I want to try it out. And he's like, look, man, that stuff is dangerous. Do not do any of it. Just come straight, come get me. Okay? Do not hit that. Just get in the car, come straight and come get me, and I'm going to show you how to do it. I was like, I thought he was looking out for my best interest. I'm like, all right, cool, man. So I go pick up Big Head, man, and we proceed to smoke that cocaine like nobody's business, man. And I remember the first time I took that hit. He would tell me that when you blow out a hit, it feels like your face is coming off. Now, I didn't have that experience, but I'll tell you what I did have is, man, as that cocaine hit me and something changed, man, I felt completely different. You know, Dathan talked about it. At some point, my mind quit controlling my body, and my body started controlling my mind. And I remember when I took that first hit of crack, man, I could not think straight. The only thing I could think was, I got to put another hit on that can. And so we ended up at Tucson Medical Center in the parking lot smoking this crack, because I got to be honest with you, I had no idea how much crack it took to overdose. Neither did he. He never smoked that much crack either. So we're just smoking and smoking. And so we decided to go into the parking lot, back the car in, and then the first person to OD gets pushed out and the other one leaves. So sounded like a good idea. So if you party like that, you're probably in the right chair. And so neither of us overdosed, but what did happen is that, you're not going to believe it, but they came back. Right? A week went by, and they came home, and these weren't kind people. They didn't get to where they were by being forgiving and gentle, and so I conjured up this story, man, as they're like, hey, we got pulled over in Blythe, we got shook down, but we're on our way. And I was like, oh, I got to start dropping the story on him right now. And I'm like, I got robbed. He was like, what? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, man, I'm an hour away. I'll see you when I get there. And so I got there and I conjured up this wild story. And I remember sitting in my mother's driveway. I loosely say driveway, dirt. Sitting by the side of the house. And man, and I'm like, dude, I got to look beat up. I got to look lumped up. And I don't know if any of you have ever tried to physically punch yourself. But you get all the gusto from about here to here. And then somewhere right around the bend, it just physically, it just slows down. Like you just can't cover this gap, man. It turns out it's really difficult to do, man. And I tried pretty hard. And so I got a couple seemingly, lumps in. I thought I lumped up my eye decent. And so I go break a razor in my mom's bathroom and cut up some spots and get a little blood rolling. And so they get back and I'm like, they're like, what happened? And so I'm like, yeah, man, I met this cat down there on 4th Ave over by the laundromat. He said he wanted a half ounce. I came back to meet him. I was talking to him. I had the pistol in the seat, and then the dude got behind me, and I didn't see him. And I give him the whole rundown on this robbery that happened. And seemingly they believed me at the time, and we're rolling around looking for the culprits. And we've been driving around for about an hour. And my buddy Marcos kept asking me, like, man, so what happened? So what even brought you down to the laundromat? And so I could feel the story starting to unravel. The more times I told it, the more unsure they were getting, right? And there just happened to be this old boy walking down the road, had some groceries, probably construction worker, just an average dude trying to get by. And I'm like, that's him. And man, and we jumped out of the car and we got to beating this dude. And we probably beat this dude half to death. And I remember riding back in the car that day, just absolutely disgusted. I vomited outside, then we're worried about the vomit because the dude, and just the whole bad deal. And I'm like, you think they can get my DNA from vomit? Because I've already been down once and got my DNA. And I was just disgusted. I was disgusted with myself, and yet again, here's another example. And at that moment, I swore off I was never going to do that crack cocaine ever again. I was never, ever, ever going to hurt somebody like that again. And I was never, ever going to do that crack ever again. And you're not going to believe it. The very next opportunity, I did some time and got out and blah, blah, blah. And you're not going to believe it, but the very first time that a piece of rock touched my fingertips, bing, I smoked it. Would you believe that? Being in this room, that's the craziest thing, right? First piece of crack ever touched my hand, I smoked it. It always went from my hand to the pipe from there on. And so, man, oddly enough, I got introduced to Cocaine Anonymous in probably 2000. And I only know it was 2000 because I was incarcerated for Y2K, and I believe that when all the computers glitch, all the doors are going to pop open. Bang! And I had been scoping out the maintenance yard, the maintenance shed for a while. There was these gas-powered gators. So I already had my plan. I was going to get back to the neighborhood. It was going to be great. And but the doors didn't pop. They figured out the computers were all dialed in. And so the very first meeting I went to, one of those people were in this room. And the other one is back at my place of business. And he and I work with him. These two dudes brought a meeting of Cocaine Anonymous into this meeting, into this facility, and they carried the message of hope. And they talked about, if you're not happy with the life that you're living, we can show you how to live a different one. And I was inspired, and I didn't stay sober for good, and I didn't get sober and work the steps and stay sober for good from there. But what I did here is I heard a message of hope. And I talk about Garrett being my sponsor because probably the most influential thing in my life is sponsorship. Man, it's absolutely imperative that I stay real tight with my sponsor. And it's the men and the women in this program that inspire me, man. They continue to inspire me, and the growth that I have even after I've been sober a while, it's because I find it in these rooms. I get close to you, I go to conventions and I do things like that, and I meet people and I get inspired. I want what you have. My whole life I've been mimicking you because I want what you have. Whatever you were, whatever you did, I wanted what you had, so I mimicked what you do. And thank God for that, man. And I picked my first sponsor because he smoked big cigars and drove a Honda that had leather in it. I knew he was rich. He was going to show me how to get some money. And and I didn't stay sober, and I ended up with a different sponsor, but he's always been a crucial part of my life. And I got another sponsor subsequently, and this sponsor, man, I was living at a halfway house called Solutions, and I had to get a job. The guy who ran the halfway house said, hey, man, I need you to get a job. Got to get a job. I don't care if you got a little money in your pocket, get a job. So I go to do drilling with this guy, and I'm in this drilling truck, and he's asking me all these questions, right? He's like, hey, so how you know Keith, the guy who, took me to the job? I'm like, we're like neighbors. He's like, oh, you're neighbors? I was like, yeah. He's like, what, y'all live next door to each other? I'm like, well, I got a house with some roommates, but he lives in the apartments like on the other side of the parking lot. And he's like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. He does AA meetings, right? And I was like, yeah, I really don't know him personally like that. I don't know, man. He's like, oh, you don't go to AA? I'm like, yeah, AA, man, that thing's not really for me. That's for the weak-minded, man. That's not me. I take care of my business, and blah, blah, blah. And little do I know, this dude, he calls the sponsors on Friday. He's on the board of this joint that I live at. I think he's been sober like a decade. And he's like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, I go to AA. I'm like, oh, hey, man, I didn't mean to be, no offense or anything. I didn't mean to offend or anything, if that's your thing, He's like, yeah, it's kind of my thing, I don't want to smoke crack anymore. I used to run around on Van Buren and smoke a lot of crack. And so now I'm getting like, when you're caught, I'm like, oh, man. So I'm like, yeah, hey, man, hey, I didn't mean to be offensive, And he's like, look, man, stop, man. I'm in a 12-step program because I got a life today that's absolutely amazing. I remember walking the streets of Van Buren just begging God to have a life that was halfway decent. And man, and I knew that he was telling the truth, and I was inspired. When we traded some stories, he talked about robbing tricks in the old hotel rooms and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, yeah. Yeah, I related to him. I was inspired by his story. I was like, wow. And then he asked me to go to his house, and I remember, and that's how I met my wife. His wife was my wife's sponsor. And I remember I went to their house, and his wife was in the backyard, pushing this swing, and her hair was flowing in the wind. This is the way I remember it, right? This long blonde hair flowing in the wind. These beautiful kids smiling and laughing, getting pushed on the swing, and I remember thinking, my God, if I had that, I'd be okay. Because I would come to the meetings and I would see you and I would find all the reasons why your life was different. You could only be happy because you didn't come where I came from, or you had opportunities I didn't, or all these reasons, all the reasons that keep me in everlasting ignorance. And, but I was inspired, man. I wanted what he had, bad. And so I started to work with him. I committed a bunch of crimes after that and didn't stay sober, and so it was a while before we got to hook back up. But when we did hook back up, now I promised my friends I was going to tell you guys a couple funny stories. I got a couple funny loaded stories about robbing banks with women's church hats and all kinds of good stuff, stealing the home group's money when I was the GSR, all kinds of great stories, but I did stay loaded a little long, so that was the short version. All those things, I did them, I promise. And but what happened, man, for me is that I got tired, man. I got tired of living the life that I was living, and I wanted something different. So I was out. I was wearing some underwear that my mother bought me. It had been so long since Mom had bought me underwear. State of Arizona had been putting clothes on me for so long. She didn't know I don't wear the little V-ochos. You know what I'm talking about? The little, look like a V in the front and an 8 in the back. That's where that comes from, right? And so I was at this. Somebody got it. So, man, so I'm wearing these underwears that my mom got me. God bless her. She got me a half a pack of cigarettes and $8 because mom had heard of a dime before. Asked me to promise to never come back to Tucson. I did, and we got started. I was at that halfway house. I called that dude up and I said, "Hey, man, Jason." Actually, a dude bumped into me, Joe, and said, "Hey, man, hey, Donald, I heard you. Jason told me you were getting out soon. Wanted me to have you call him when I saw you." I said, "Okay." Called him up and he said, "Hey, man, Donald, let me ask you a question, man. You want to never ever spend another day in a cell? You want to never ever have the misery of the life that you're living today? Do you want to know what it feels like to have something with a value of over $20 hit your hand and not go get crack?" I was like, man, more than anything in the world, I'd love to feel that. And he said, "All right, cool, man. I need you to get a big book. Get one of them little red ones. Somebody has one around there. And I need you to start reading. I'll be there later today." And you know what we did, man? We got in the book. And we worked the 12 steps as quickly as we could. And man, and I had an experience as a result. I started sponsoring people, and man, and I stayed sober for a while. And then something happened. I quit doing things, and this is that GSR story. I wasn't growing. I wasn't growing emotionally. I wasn't growing spiritually. I wasn't growing doing anything. I was still the same dude. I was a sober horse thief. You ever heard that story? You know, when you take a horse thief and you sober him up, you got a sober horse thief. That was me. And I was doing all the wrong things and beating people up at the halfway house and being just a buffoon, a goon, for lack of a better description. And I ended up getting loaded. And man, and I came crawling back about a week later, and I was sure that I wanted to do something different for real. And I got at this time, that sponsor had moved to Texas, so I was kind of sponsor list there for a while too. I don't suggest it. I got loaded. Some people don't. I did. So, and I got back and I got this AA sponsor, and I did a bunch of different meetings away from my wife and have a different experience. And man, and I got busy and I did the steps, and I got on my 9th step. I started paying my creditors. I started doing everything that they talked about, and I followed the direction word for word. Because I wanted it so bad. And you know, and I started to meet some people in this program. You know, I was very insecure. You know, I'm the guy that I want what you have so bad, but I'm so proud to ask, right? I'm embarrassed. I'm the guy that feels so much less than you, but at the same time my head can tell you that I'm better. I'm so afraid that you won't like me, I just judge you instead. I find all the differences because I'm so afraid to be vulnerable to you and to ask you to help me, to be my friend and to show me what you have. And so my wife made this amazing suggestion. She said, "Hey, man, you want to get to know Jay Parker? You want to get to know these guys, Doug, and all these great guys in the Phoenix Fellowship. You want to get to know these guys? You know where you'll meet them? You'll meet them in service. Go be of service." And my wife, she was the secretary for our district, and she would be gone, you know, for several hours on Thursday night once a month. I'd be like, "Man, where you go at 7 o'clock at night till 10 o'clock at night? What meeting is this? Down there, check this thing out. Sure this is on the up and up, and you're not going to believe it." I showed up, and they were like, "Come on in." You know, and I got to help the angriest dude on like hearing impaired and outreaches. Dear friend of mine, Jimmy, man, he's just the angriest, crotchetiest dude in the world, right? He just yell at me for everything. Now I was pretty sure I could whoop him, but he'd been sober so long. I'm like, "Oh man, I think it'll get me kicked out for good." You know, I didn't want to get thrown out. You know, you can't beat up a May guy in CA, right? And so You hear, right, the madness, right? When I got sober, right? It was just mayhem and madness. And so he would yell at me, man, and tell me things like, you know what, Donald, we're here because we don't want what you have. And you're here because you don't want what you have. My one curse word, and I did pretty good, right? No curse words? He's like, so you just shut the fuck up. That's your job. You're in charge of shutting the fuck up. That's your job. You're the chair of shutting the fuck up, and then you take all your other little buddies, Stumper and Spooky and all them other bozos from the halfway house, and you make sure they shut the fuck up too. And if you guys put all the chairs away as fast as you can, maybe make it a little competition amongst yourselves, I'll give you guys a ride home from the meeting. I'm like, all right, Jimmy, cool, man. And so, forgive me for that Fred Flintstone sobriety reference, because sometimes, in Phoenix, we do it a little like archaic, man. Sometimes it's simple. I've been nervous as could be, and I thought about all these great spiritual things I was going to share with you guys, and man, and sometimes it's just not my style. I will say that for every spiritual violation, there's a spiritual correction. I stole that from my wife earlier today. That is not original material, I promise. And man, and that's kind of been the story of my deal in this program, man. Every mistake that I make, sometimes it takes time, but there is a spiritual correction for every spiritual violation, man. And I got to know these guys in this program, and I was talking to Jay as we're talking about this workshop, and he says to me, he goes, I'm going to have lunch with this guy, you know this guy. And I'm like, Jay, you're very approachable, man. You know that? Like you're a dude who has like everything that you'd imagine you're like this example of what the 12 steps in someone's life can do, man. You're like this. You're so attractive in that way, man. Like you just can't help but want to just be like you, man. And that's my sponsor. I love him dearly. And I said, dude, you know what, man? You're kind of like the dirtbag whisperer. You know that? You know what I mean? You're real approachable, man. And so people feel comfortable, man. When you're kind of a dirtbag and you want to be like, I want to be better. I want to be a man like you. I want to be a respected man in my community and a respected man in my household, and I want to be respected by my peers. And I don't know what the action to do is to do that. And thank God for the people in this program, because that's what I get. I don't know how to do that on my own. I'm just a dope fiend that came into this room because I was broken. I was absolutely broken. I was terrified and afraid, and I didn't know what to do. And what happened is that I worked the 12 steps in their entirety, and the obsession to use was removed. It worked perfect. And then I had to learn how to live life, right? Like life went on, right? So I had to learn how to do things. Like I had to learn how to be a dad and a family man and a husband and respectable and honest and to do those things. And those weren't first nature to me. Those things didn't come natural. So I have 2 stepchildren. I love them dearly. And, we went to this school thing. This is one of my favorite stories. Tell 2 stories about my kids, and I'm wrapping it up because it's that time. One, Natalie, she's a sweetheart. She's a teenager. She absolutely hates me today, but let me tell you about this time. Let me rewind for you a little bit. And, she has a great relationship with her dad, and she loves her mom like crazy. So we're at this school, and it's a nice school, and it's surely like the people that are in the room of this little musical type of thing, they're not they did not smoke cocaine butt naked in the log cabin. You know what I mean? They didn't. I assure you. I mean, maybe there's one in there, but I doubt it. Well, there was at least one. And man, and she's doing this thing, right? And there's all these like sport coats and people, they were dialed in looking nice. And man, and Natalie, she's nervous as can be, right? So she's at the corner on this stage and she's got her dress. And she's so nervous, she's like working it up with her hands, but like her dress is starting to come up a little bit. And I'm like, wow. And so I'm in the crowd and they're doing like, over the mountain, and like these like, so I'm terrible. Please don't make me do it again. But they're singing along, and they're doing like these hand gestures, right? So I stand up, and I start doing the hand gestures, you know, with them. I feel like a complete fucking idiot. Excuse me. I feel like a complete fool, right? And I see her. We lock eyes, and I'm doing like. Whatever, and I hear this sport coat snicker behind me. Turn around real quick. We figured it out. Got back to doing my thing, and as it's over, she comes shooting down this aisle. Right, set up just like this. She comes shooting down this aisle. Mom's sitting on this side, Dad's sitting on this side. She doesn't go to Mom or Dad. She comes straight to me. Now, my whole life, I always wanted to be needed and wanted and part of, and I did all these things, right, to get that. Inside these rooms, outside these rooms, I did all these things to be that, to be a part of something, to mean something to somebody, and to be dependable enough to be there. And for that girl, I was there that day, and she jumps up in my arms, and I was like, honey, you know, I was really nervous out there. And she goes, yeah, I could tell. And then our son Noah, man, you know, we neighbors come by one day, knock on the door, right? Noah's like me, man. That's why, God, he drive. Man, we've had the hardest time. He's 18 now. You know, I try to give him a job. We're trying to work it out, man. And me and him, we it's hard working for old Dad, right? We have a hard time sometimes. And but at this, he must have been 12 maybe. Neighbors come knocking on the door and they're like, hey, Noah's up in the tree throwing rocks at like us and the dog. It's like that. Comes storming out. I'm like, no, get in here. And I sit him down and I'm like, Noah, now what on earth will make you think that it's okay to throw rocks at the neighbors? Like, man, what were you thinking? And he's like, and I was looking at them rocks, man, and they were just laying there. Dude, I completely took the wind out of my sails. I'm like, I get it. Dude, I do. Dude, I get it. I'm not saying it's okay. You cannot throw rocks at the neighbors. But what I am saying, dude, is I get it. There is nobody that gets it more than me. I promise you that. And, man, it's been an absolute honor to share my experience, strength, and hopefully it was hope as well. And, you know, the cool thing about this deal, man, and we hear it in the beginning of every meeting, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, it will always materialize if you work for them, right? These promises have come true in my life, and it is a result of just continuing to show up, not doing it right all the time, and believing in this process. Thanks for letting me share.